Yeah. How's the baseball going? Good. No, yeah. They got the team going. All right, so I got to
Hey, so I just started on the stream actually, so we're live now. Yeah, so we're good to go. You might go back to what I want to share the screen with the stream.
This baby up and running.
The left, the right.
I love your
See
Right.
going on.
Oh,
The steps right here.
There's no mouse though, is there?
Or there is no.
I would like to leave those in black. I need to get a color yet.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's
that's right. And then I go, it's already going, right?
So it's already streaming here.
Okay.
But if you want to show a document, click this little eye here to display capture. And when you do that, they'll see
good. All right,
so
Paige.
what you're physically seeing right here, they will see. And so you can go to whatever document, and then they'll be able to see it. And then once you're done, you'll go back and
There's water in
because
the
right now
floor too.
it's hidden.
Anybody want a water tank?
I would love one.
Why should I watch it through the,
I'd like one.
and then.
Right now you don't have to do anything.
I'm good.
That's okay.
Thank
No,
you.
it's good to go.
And I can go and run and grab some if you
Thank you.
need some for
Yep.
the next.
Slide the-
meeting.
Yeah, I think we'll have to restart it.
Slide that,
Okay, I'll try to remember.
and make it smaller,
I'm good, thank you.
right?
Sure. Yeah, that's good.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I'll take one. Thank you.
Over here.
Thanks, James.
You're not leaving, are you, Jane?
Not very
Okay, good.
He's like, that's me, that's me, right? Yeah. Okay. Meeting to order. I'm gonna. Oh, shoot. Motion.
Second.
Come out of closed session, Amanda, yes. Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Julie? Yes. Sarah?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously to come out of session. Closed session.
Now I'm going to policy together and that's one prize. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the United States of America and to the republic. One nation. Indivisible. With liberty and justice.
All right, we have some, first I'd like to welcome everybody face to face here. Nice to see everybody. We do have some recommendations, or the first one is for a teacher to hire. And I believe that's Michelle. Dr. Cook? You earned that doctorate.
Great to see everybody, by the way, in person. So tonight, I am very pleased to recommend Mrs. Colleen Learman as a special education teacher to begin the 2021-22 school year. Mrs. Lehman's work experience began in the Lansing School District as a special ed teacher for grades K through 6. She has been employed for the past 4 years with the Holt Community Schools as a 5th and 6th grade special education teacher. Mrs. Learman earned her bachelor's degree in special education. She has a cognitive impairment endorsement and an MA in SLD, specific learning disability. so she's very well versed in special education. Mrs. Lehman made a very positive impression through the 2 rounds of interviews that we held. It was unanimous that she was recommended for a final interview with myself and Dr. Spina. Her references were glowing on her professionalism and her caring style of working with the students. And during both interviews, Mrs. Learman was able to really articulate her understanding of unique needs for our students with disabilities. And she's very excited to form positive relationships with our student staff and our families. So without any reservation, I recommend the board approve Mrs. Learman's hire as our special education teacher for Williamston Community Schools.
Hi. Excited to be here.
She's glowing. She's got a thermograph.
I am so excited. I'm very excited. This is one of the most exciting things we get to do as board members, I think. I guess this is right. So, I'm gonna do this a little different in the past. We've heard from all of them, but can we take the motions for each one at a time, and then when we get through all of our hires, we can get up and do our congratulations?
Yeah.
Okay,
Shake
so,
hands, though.
oh, that's true. We don't.
We'll just wave.
That's true. Sorry. That's true. Yeah, thank you. So, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Colleen Lehman as a teacher to begin with the 2021-2022 school year.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
You're welcome.
So this is kind of strange. My next recommendation is also Colleen. 2 Colleens. And it is my pleasure to recommend Mrs. Colleen Feeney as the district social worker to begin 2021-22 school year. Mrs. Feeney's work experience is extensive with youth. She has worked in the field of foster care. She was a team leader and a case manager. She also worked for Ingham County Detention Center as a therapist. For the past 2 years, she's been working for Weberville Community Schools as the only school social worker. So Mrs. Feeney holds a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology and also a minor in Substance Abuse Treatment and Prevention from U of M Flint. She obtained her MA in social work from Spring Arbor University, and she additionally had to go and get her certification for social work from Michigan State University, which is 3 additional classes. She also went through 2 rounds of interviews. Dr. Spina and myself did our final interview. Her references were exceptional, and during both interviews, Mrs. Feeney repeatedly shared her collaboration and her team effort and desire to move back here to Williamston. She looks forward to being part of our staff, but she also brings her daughter to be part of our Williamston community for next year, which is very exciting. So again, with no reservation, I do recommend the board approve Mrs. Feeney to be hired as our district social worker for Williamston Community Schools.
Thank you. All right.
I'll do this one again. This is one of my favorite things. I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Colleen Feeney as a social worker to begin with the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Let's go through.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Welcome.
Exciting. Okay, our next one, and this is a pretty exciting one for me. Keeps us all on track.
So I got James, so James, come on up. So, one of the cool things is in our district is a lot of times we're able to bring people into our community that we know are going places, have an abundance of talent. and ability, and I think James is representative of that type of person. So I know most folks on the board know James Doyen already. He has an outstanding reputation throughout the district, but I think his success speaks to his organization, his work ethic, and his attention to detail. Just 3 years ago, James was hired as a technician. Since then, he's already been promoted internally to technology specialist, serving as the chief point of contact for all technology-related issues. This year, that role really expanded to having a interface with students and parents, often working with parents to correct issues with their devices for students engaged in remote learning. And so has clearly demonstrated his capacity and potential for continued growth and development and leadership opportunities. With the revision of our technology agreement with Hazlitt, which the board will look at later this evening, our recommendation is that James is again promoted internally to the role of technology supervisor, where he will then move to the next position where he's not only interfacing with the technical side of technology, but also the business side as well. We have the great fortune of having Jeff Casson, who will stay on as a consultant for the next year to continue to work with James during that development process, which is probably the best on-the-job training that you can get from just an amazing tech director in Jeff. And really look forward to all the great things that James will continue to do, and he'll be close by to come over and fix my computer. I have inevitably those issues. So James Doyle, for your consideration with my highest recommendation.
And he has kept us safe and on track for a long time. It seems like. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire James Doyen to be the district technology supervisor effective July 1st, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations. These are pretty exciting. Not that long ago, I actually saw your face, like a month ago. Not hearing your Siri voice.
Yeah, it's nice to be kind of back in person and seeing everyone. And I know with the Zoom meetings and posting things remotely, I feel like I've kind of been in the background and seeing the board more. So, but I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just grateful to be a part of the team. And thanks.
We are very.
Well, we're happy to have you.
I am very appreciative of you keeping us safe and keeping us going and keeping school going. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's just informational.
So the next one is just kind of a housekeeping item. Do I have a motion for Rebecca Paulson's recommendation of Caroline Hart?
I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Caroline Hart as the office manager for Kids Corner and Little Hornets effective immediately.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So we have our new employees. Very exciting to them all.
Awesome.
Okay. I don't know. We're going to open it up to citizen comments. I don't think we have any citizens, but if we have any citizens, it'd be for 3 minutes. This is their time to address the board with any of their thoughts, concerns, appreciation.
And they have to be here. They're not here.
Yes, they do have to be present. If you guys want to address the board, you're committee members. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Evan and keep moving. Celebration.
So Jeff, if you could bring up the celebrations link.
Yeah.
We need James already.
No, it just there's multiple things up there. So, okay, how come that stayed on?
You broke it.
No. No, no. James?
Did we say effective immediately for James?
You broke it.
Somehow the PowerPoint. There you go. Huh,
I just had to get close to it.
that's right. He's that good. All right, so I'll roll through some news stories that are on the website, and then I got a couple other things. So first, news story was posted today, just kind of wrapping up some of our winter sports. I'm not going to steal Paige Polson's thunder, but I did want to highlight that we had three teams, or three winter sports, I guess you should say, that moved to state finals at the individual level. We had one gymnast, three swimmers who placed at finals, and then I believe 5 wrestlers, including a repeat state champion, which is pretty impressive to say the least. So you can click on the story, it has pictures and the results and all that good stuff if you're interested at home in learning more. First Robotics teams, which is the next story on the page, finished up a virtual season. Their season last year, like our winter and spring athletes, was prematurely canceled, and so they never got to compete last year, which was actually the inaugural season for the middle school First Robotics team. So this was actually their first year competing. Both teams competed virtually, although obviously they had a chance to work in person in the robotics lab to design and build the robots. So inside the story, in addition to photos, there's actually a few YouTube videos you can click on that will show the high school robot competing in its virtual competition. One of the things I'm really looking forward to once COVID finally passes is getting back to the real First Robotics competitions, because if you haven't been to one, they're just really, really cool. I mean, really cool. And so hopefully next year we'll be able to get back into that. But I do want to compliment Megan Allen, who's the coach for the middle school team, and Cody Reeve, the coach at the high school team. This is a new initiative for the district 2 years ago, and those two have really come in and made it happen. We got a brand new robotics lab at the high school. It's full of, I don't know, over up to $40,000 of equipment that's been added to the lab. So all the tools and electronics and everything you can think of to build these has been acquired through grants that the district has received, and they're making the most of it. So well done to all the students and their coaches, and hopefully next year, like so many other things, we'll get back to a little bit more normality. And I don't know if this was covered in your previous board meeting, I can't remember, but just in case, I did want to make sure that we covered that the Quiz Bowl team at the middle school has qualified for the national tournament, and Johnny Ellis, who's the coach, done a great job, and obviously that's just a big highlight for those kids this year. So we got sports, we got robotics, we got Quiz Bowl, nice variety of things going on that our kids are excelling at. A couple other quick things. Quick note: we did end up placing second in that Channel 10. Who has the best gym or whatever that gym court, whatever it was. District that beat us, I think their gym has a little more history than perhaps ours, but I think ours is, I don't know, I would definitely vote ours number one. There's all kinds of myths about the new floor, right? I've heard it's bamboo, I've heard it's like all these other things. It's the same floor, we just sanded it down and painted it, but it looks really good. So anyway, a great facility for Williamston for all our students to use. I do want to highlight also, I put this in my buzz update on Friday with a couple photos, but I just wanted to recognize the maintenance and custodial staff for their work over spring break. Our instructional staff leaves for a week and our students leave for a week, but we got a lot of folks, including Mr. Paulson here, who are here doing a lot of work to set us up for success when we come back. And every year, with just a week to work, the maintenance custodial team always does a phenomenal job. The landscaping around the elementary campus and the central office, the best it's ever looked by far. Extensive painting throughout the building. They swapped out a water heater in this building. They put new carpet and paint in some of the classrooms here. That was very much needed, and a bunch of other projects, including my favorite, which is putting the decorative rocks inside the bollards. So no watering plants for me this summer. So well done, gentlemen. They did a great job as always. And then finally, again, we touch on this every meeting, but it it needs to be said, especially this year. Just my deepest appreciation to our staff, our parent community, and our students for their resiliency as we continue to navigate through this pandemic. In February, beginning of February, we thought things looked like they were going to kind of finish out more on the easy end of things, and obviously that has not been the case. And we're still dealing with very difficult issues on a daily basis. So this is not over. I know a lot of folks are very tired, emotionally spent with this, and I don't completely understand why that is. But I continue to be impressed by the resiliency of our community as a whole, and greatly appreciative of everyone who has a connection to the school district for their support as we continue to move forward. So pending any questions, that is celebrations for this evening.
Questions for Adam? No. All right, I'm gonna move on to educational update.
That will be Paige.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Paige.
Some of you I've seen fairly recently, quite often. For the first time. So good to be in front of you, give a little bit of an update of what we got going on, what we had going on, and what spring's bringing us. So first, I just want to start off. We had a very successful, somewhat eventful winter, even though we got a late start. We cranked back a lot of things in a short amount of time. A lot of successes, both athletically and academically. I'll be able to highlight a few things here, and if you have any questions at the end, please feel free to ask. Girls basketball, we fielded 3 teams this year. With 28 girls, we finished second in the conference. We ended up losing in the district finals. We were able to host the district tournament as well as regionals too. So we had a jam-packed couple of weeks. We had 7 of our athletes receive postseason recognition. Boys basketball, we fielded to get 3 teams with 38 boys participating. We won conference. And a slightly odd deal due to some COVID precaution. We took a pause at the end, but we had a season and the district unscathed, which we did win. That was down in Chelsea. We hosted the regional finals and lost a classic, great matchup to the eventual second runner champion, state champion runner-ups. And then with boys, we had 6 athletes with all league recognition. For the human dive, 19 participants. We were co-champions of the conference. We had 8 swimmers go to the state meet, and we would have had more this year. We allowed more alternates. We had enough, but they were limited to what you could put into the relays and your alternates you could bring. We had 4 top 20 finishes at the state meet. It was a great year. Coach Cole, our first year coach, has done an awesome job with the girls and boys. Wrestling, we started out very slim, not knowing what was surrounding what the protocols were for wrestling. We did get our number up to 13, and we won the team districts, got to host team regionals, and we ended up sending 5 kids to the state, as Adam alluded to earlier. We had a 7th, 6th, 4th, and a state repeat champion, which was a fantastic event to go down and watch. I was lucky enough to travel down to Kalamazoo and see our boys compete. And actually, just a side note, which was really awesome in the regional individual tournament, the 2 brothers, 2 Johnny Shea brothers, actually wrestling against each other the same way. Cheer. We had 8 girls this year. We competed in our division, in our districts. We had a very, I'd say, inexperienced new group, a lot of freshmen and sophomores. So it's a great building block. We kept the program going in hopes that we could build on those young numbers as we move forward in our program. We did well. We improved our score each meet, and looking forward to gaining our numbers and building. Middle school sports, the longest middle school season I think has ever happened. But we did have boys basketball, that's completed season. We had 38 kids with 4 teams. Girls basketball, sadly, due to our indoor pause and not having the other teams to really compete against after this week or even during this week if we were going, we had to cancel the rest of the season. Everybody's moving on to track now. But we had 20 girls and we had 2 teams. And wrestling was very, very short with 5 boys. A lot of that had to do with other wrestling opportunities during the time that wrestling was going on with the pause. Track just started their practice today, middle school track, and we're looking at about 50 kids. Spring sports, we are at 39 for baseball, 21 for softball, 22 for tennis, 29 for soccer, 15 for boys golf. Track and field is 50 and 16 for boys and girls, with about 192 participants total. Add that on to our middle school track that just started, and we have a pretty busy testing day when we test. Everybody's been great. The coaches have been fantastic. We run a very smooth operation, and the coaches do a great job of getting everything in order so that we can just test and get out there and get our kids on the field this spring. So we had 106 athletes in winter high school sports. Going forward, we have a tennis court project that we have planned to have resurfaced, scrap repaired, and repaint. Looking to start in June and finish in early July. And I think that's a great way to do that because it's something that's definitely needed. We have a great team, we have a great facility. It just needs a little update on the neglected courts, and so I appreciate that.
I guess I have one question on, but I know we're going to be talking about it later, is the tennis court resurfacing. So we did all that testing and found out we didn't need the extensive repair we were thinking, and that just resurfacing was going to be acceptable.
There's an extensive repair that's needed. What the resurfacing will do is get us another 5 to 6 years to the point where we might have the fiscal resources at that point through a potential bond that would allow us to do a long-term fix.
Okay.
So it's biding time, I guess I put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
But it will allow us to be able to host with 8 courts functional compared to right now where it's just sub.
This will completely, now new cracks will form because that's what happens, but it will be a problem, and again, hold up for 5 to 6 years with proper upkeep and maintenance to get us through to a point where we'll be able to do something else with it.
Can you remind us what the testing hours are on Sundays?
Testing, it goes from 4:15 to the last team comes in at 7. Teams are scheduled in their own blocks, and they come during their time so coaches can check them off and make sure we have everybody that needs to be there.
Community members that want, well, not community members, any students that want to come in and aren't athletes, do they wonder in that?
That starts tomorrow. The page is also running that. So starting tomorrow on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:30 to 4:30, students can come as long as they have the consent form filled by their parent to be tested as well.
Do they have to register for that or just?
No, that will be headed staff from 3:30 to 4:30. They'll test and then we only contact people if there's a positive case, negative cases, or just let it be.
Very exciting. Well, I appreciate you pulling all of that together and making that work. I have heard from athletes who do it on Sunday, very seamless, and it doesn't seem to be a big deal, and there haven't been any advice. They think it's very easy to come and get tested. So I appreciate that.
I didn't even notice my kid leaving and getting home. It was like, have you gone yet? Yeah, I'm already back. It was like,
Have them out in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
get them when they get in line, 10 minutes in the building. They're longer, that's their own issue. They feel they in the parking lot talking to their friends. 6 feet apart.
Any other questions?
Yeah, when we talked about having you here this time at our last board meeting, we had questions about esports, shooting sports, bowling, and fishing.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you have people from the community asking you about those, and what are your thoughts?
I have not had any conversations with anybody in the community. Now, shooting, circle back to a year and a couple months ago was something that was on, but I haven't been contacted again about that, so I don't know if anybody else has.
Okay.
I don't know what they've done with that. Esports, I have not had any contact with anybody about being interested. Bowling team, that would be the same thing. And fishing, we do have a club. We do have a fishing team currently.
And is that, I don't remember, is that bass only, or is that all?
So most things are just bass. I mean, there's specific tournaments for different fish, but there's not necessarily a species related for each team.
Okay.
Species.
Yeah, I mean, generally with those, we look, if there's interest from kids, then we start to kind of take, the administrators will work that, and if there's enough interest, that'll end up at the board. I know pre-COVID, at the high school, there was a lot of interest or momentum behind archery. And Adele Bannister had gotten the grant for the archery materials that were introduced into her PE class, and it was very popular. But like so many other things, COVID has, kind of put a damper or pause on a lot of those. So we'll see if archery is still popular when we kind of come out of this, and but that's the latest kind of additional thing that we've seen kids, especially at the high school, expressing some interest in.
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of money in esports, so I'm curious about that.
It is up and coming. I mean, there are a lot of people are pushing it, so certainly would be well able to listen to kids in groups that have some good ideas for that.
Okay, thanks.
Now, bowling is a CAAC sport, correct? So that wouldn't be too difficult to get a schedule. Kids just knew that it's even available, because probably many kids don't know that it's available.
Probably not in the area. So imagine, I don't know if there's a local bowling alley.
Yeah, you got Hazlitt and Mason, right?
Yeah, Hazlitt's the closest.
Does Hazlitt have their own team? I know we can join with Hazlitt, like on lacrosse and the others. I don't seem like.
Yeah, we've joined with Hazlitt on a number of things, gymnastics, lacrosse, hockey. Yeah, so I mean, that's not, that's very much a possibility if we get some, students that express interest to collaborate with another district.
Anything else?
No. Thank you, Paige.
All right,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do want to just reiterate the fantastic job Paige has done. I always say the one job in education I would never want to do would be athletic director, and that's like a normal year. But just the amount of extra just stuff he's had to deal with, and he's just navigated all that seamlessly. And the testing piece, I just want to reiterate that he did with about 3 or 4 people what other districts took 10 people to do, and we tested the second most amount of people out of any local district in the county day prior to kids coming back from spring break. And now we've been able to expand that out to 2 additional testing opportunities for any parent who's interested to bring their child. That's uncommon, I guess I would say, in terms of those opportunities that are being provided, and Paige is doing all the work behind the scenes to make that happen. So just want to extend my compliments to everything you and your team are doing this year.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. I won't name my employer, but my employer did testing, and it was a chaotic nightmare. And I was there an hour and 15 minutes and never left my car. So, in the same type of testing. So it was not an easy, it was not a well-organized thing. So I do appreciate it very much. I'm
Well,
sure every parent appreciates it.
And thank you for the feedback, and to be honest, we have really good people in the district that make it very easy to do these things. So, really thank you guys for hiring awesome people.
Thank you.
And it does go quite quite smooth. We've had to do it 2 different times now for spring sports, and it's very, very smooth and goes very quickly, and so it seems to be working well.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paige.
So much. Okay, now it's going to talk about our board goal presentation. And just to remind everybody, the information he's going over is information that he will use when we do his evaluation. So the information he's giving us right now, the updates and all of that, we will use when we do his evaluation coming up.
Yeah, so I'll cover that. Just a couple quick things to hit before we, just before we get to that. So starting with, I just want to point out, I guess I'll put her on the spot here, but Nancy has received 2 awards from the Michigan Association of School Boards, including the Award of Merit. So congratulations to our president for those accolades from MASB.
Congratulations.
And if anybody wants to go to that presentation, it's very easy to sign up.
At the Zoom meeting.
Upcoming events. So, as most of you know, in May, the meetings tend to get pretty intense in terms of updates. So this year will be no different. So expect throughout May, you'll be seeing presentations from all the buildings in terms of initiatives that they've worked on this year and any handbook revisions that they're looking to put in place for next year. So the normal spring, May, June schedule, just expect the meetings to have many components to them, as is normally the case.
And I also just want to add that on the back, there are things at the high school, the senior awards night. I would like to ask Jeff and Julie if you would be willing to have kids graduating. I think that's pretty special. If you would like to be our representatives for that. I've talked to Jeff, I haven't had the chance to talk to you.
Sure.
Can you read the names?
We have to share that.
Oh.
It's a shared experience, Jeff.
So Betsy, if you can just let the high school know that Jeff and Julie will be our representatives for that, so I don't forget.
Michelle Smith is exceptional, though, with that pronunciation, so.
Yeah.
She does. But thank you, I appreciate that.
So as Nancy was alluding to in your packet, you have a list of the end of year events. Obviously this year it's, the list is pretty abbreviated in comparison to a normal year, unfortunately, but we are determined, especially with our seniors, to send them out the right way this year. And so you'll see highlights such as NHS induction ceremony, senior awards night, and commencement. We plan to do all those events this year, and there's an informational letter that will be forthcoming from the high school to parents that provide the details on how that will work.
Will they be expecting parents to be at any of these things or no? With limited?
Yes.
Parents will be?
Okay. Just a couple things to point out in the room as well, because it's been a while since we've met in here. We have updated the board norms poster with the additions that were approved at your winter workshop. Well, just one addition, but the poster has been updated and put in place. A long time in coming, but we did get our Female Diversity Award, which is still a kind of an unusual name, but from the College Board, and essentially what that award was for last year was closing the gender gap in terms of computer science enrollment at the high school, which was part of our K-12 STEAM initiative that we've been implementing over the last several years. So we met that target and actually got recognized for that accomplishment. So that is now up in the boardroom. All right, so I'll start by highlighting the board goals for the next 3 years in terms of things that you can expect to see a focus on. So just like in the past, the board establishes the goals, and then working with the administrative team, we kind of go in and then get into all the specifics in terms of how those goals will be reached or progress made on them over the next 3 years. And we do that by putting this into objectives, strategies, and end states for each component under each goal. What this document then does is it helps us align our district improvement plan to your board goals. In other words, the things that we're going to work on, especially with board goal 1, that have an instructional component to them, they're directly tied to what the board has prioritized in this document as things to focus on. And then from that, the school improvement plans are written that get down into the details of what each school will do to achieve the goals that are outlined on the district improvement plan, which is then connected to the board goals. And then, of course, our evaluation system then runs throughout that process. So the board holds the superintendent accountable for the district improvement plan and progress of the board goals. The principals hold their ability. I hold the principals accountable for progress at their buildings, and then the principals hold their staffs accountable for progress on these as well. So there's complete alignment throughout the district, and it's all based, at least from an instructional standpoint, everything is based on this board goal document. So goal 1, just to walk through, there's not many revisions to goal 1. Progress on this will be included in the updates that the buildings will provide to the board throughout May. They'll focus on various aspects of board goal 1, which really focuses on improving instruction, student inputs and outputs in terms of increased proficiency and academic growth. And I guess I can kind of take these one at a time. Are there any questions? There's not a lot of revisions to this from your previous board goals because, to be honest, this is an ongoing goal. There's always room for improvement on this, and we'll continue to be striving to get better here. But is there any component of this that any member of the board has questions on before we move forward? So moving to goal 2, this is a little more black and white. The board set a goal to increase the fund balance to 10% over the next 3 school years. And so that is what is articulated there. Board goal 3, which includes strengthening communication with students, parents, staff, and community. Another area that we will always be striving to improve upon. So therefore, there are no changes to the components of this goal. There will be a communication and marketing committee meeting next week that'll get back into the board's communication plan and then various other aspects of how we market and communicate. So that committee will be delving into those details here shortly. Board goal 4 involves safety and security, and I will be giving you an update on that here momentarily. And board goal 5, which is the new goal for this year, is that all schools will adopt and implement a common evidence-based grading system that includes feedback on non-achievement factors. And so I'll be talking more to that here momentarily. But before I move on, are there any questions or comments that I can address on any of the goals as outlined in the document? Or in other words, are you happy with that as written as our guiding document for the next 3 years?
Does anybody have any questions? I do really like how this is laid out very simply, easy to read. You know exactly what they are, the steps, the strategies. I appreciate you and the team laying it out. Like that laid out like this, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so then as Nancy mentioned, I'm going to give an update on board goal 5 and 4, and these are connected to the superintendent evaluation. So typically every year leading up to that date, I will go back and kind of give an overview of progress made on each of the board goals and also entertain questions that any member of the board might have or requests for more information. So starting with board goal 5, we are establishing a baseline tonight in terms of what this is and where we are looking to go. So obviously no progress has been made on it per se, since it's a new goal, although I will say that historically, this has been an area of focus probably for almost the last 10 years at some of our buildings, maybe a little less at others. And at our high school, the work has already started on this last year. Again, was a abridged effort due to COVID, but there are conversations that were initiated by the administrative team there. So there is some momentum here. It's not a cold start, but there are varying degrees of progress that need to be made to meet the board's intent, depending on the building. So to kind of go through the goal, which is board goal 5 in your packet, I'll just kind of go through each one parts of this. So again, the goal is that all schools will adopt and implement a common evidence-based grading system that includes feedback on non-achievement factors. Objective 1 is to provide quality, timely, and consistent feedback to students and parents, and it's broken into 2 strategies. So the first strategy is that our administrative team will provide professional development to staff to understand what is best practice around student assessment. And then strategy 2, using a research base, then building administrators will set expectations that they will be accountable for enforcing at their building regarding what that best practice looks like. In Williamston, we use 2 scholars whose work forms the basis for our grading practices, and that is Ken O'Connor and Tom Gutsky. I've had the privilege of working personally with both gentlemen, and I've actually got to know Dr. Gutsky a little bit on a personal level. He's a professor at the University of Kentucky and is world renowned for his work in this area of education. To illustrate some of the challenges that schools have to go through to meet some of these goals in terms of how students are evaluated, I've actually given each member of the board this evening an article by Dr. Gutsky called 5 Obstacles to Grading Reform. Obviously, if this is something you're interested in, I'm happy to have individual conversations, or you could simply Google Dr. Gutsky's got scores of academic articles written on this, but this one's a quick read. And I think from the board's perspective, it gives a nice overview of some of the challenges that we go through when we're trying to implement effective grading practices, and some of the ingrained obstacles or traditions that are not research-based, but just seem to linger around for decades and decades in education that we know aren't effective, but it can be a challenge to improve upon. Moving on to objective number 2, which is standardized reporting. Each school will use a common reporting system to provide feedback to students and parents. And so what this is saying is that each school will have a common system that's universally implemented by every educator within that building. So the philosophy of grading that's done in classroom number 1 is also done in classroom number 2 and classroom number 3. So no matter what teacher you have, the system for grading and evaluating students is consistent. And then strategy number 2 of objective 2, each school will utilize common non-achievement factors that includes a descriptive rubric of non-achievement factors connected to student learning. So to give an illustration of this in your board packet, I've given you the current report card template from each building. And you can see, again, based on where they are in this journey, some of these things that I've discussed are more evident or less evident. If you look at your elementary report cards, you can see that the amount of description and feedback and information a parent gets on their child's learning, both academically, socially, and emotionally, is pretty detailed. And when we think about what the purpose of grading is, the purpose of grading is to communicate information about a child's academic, social, and emotional growth. And it's not about arbitrary letter grades, right? So if you look at, for example, Discovery's report card, if you're a parent, that's giving you a lot of information about your child. If you just got math B, what does that communicate to you? What does that letter represent? And so I think, this is a nice illustration of the direction we're trying to move in. More work that needs to be done. I can tell you both elementary buildings continuously revise these descriptors, but I think it's a nice illustration of how some of these buildings have already started to move in this direction. So the same for Explorer. If we move on to the middle school, you can see it starts to take, report card starts to take on more of a secondary flavor. But you can also see that they have added the non-achievement rubric at the bottom. And this is something that's been revised and approved upon for years. And so this is where they are at that point. Still using those letter grades as descriptors for academic progress, but you can see there's more to what teachers observe and can communicate to parents about their students than just academics. And so that non-achievement rubric gives teachers an opportunity to provide feedback to parents about things that might be contributing to academic performance, but aren't necessarily just about the content. So obviously, if a student has great work habits, they're probably more likely to do well academically. So that's providing parents some context clues, so to speak, about some of the things that are happening that might be impacting their child's learning. And then so at the high school, this is a journey that they began in earnest last fall. Obviously, the year was abbreviated, and their professional development this year has shifted more towards navigating remote learning. But this is something that Dr. Delp is extremely knowledgeable, and Chris Armour has gone through this process during his time as a teacher at the middle school, so he's also very knowledgeable on. And we look forward to what they're able to achieve at the high school as part of their journey on the school. I will say that this is extremely challenging work. Those ingrained traditions of how grades work and what their effects are on students are hard to overcome. I've done this as a teacher, leader, or administrator in 4 different schools, ranging from preschool to high school in 2 different countries. And I can tell you that the obstacles that will be faced are the same, regardless of the level of school or the nationality of the staff that you're working with. It's a difficult journey, but at the end of the day, it's going to support learning by giving parents more accurate information about their child, which will allow that team effort between home, the student, and school will really accelerate our ability to promote academic, social, and emotional improvement. So I'll pause there. Are there any questions that I can address around this kind of baseline summary of Board Goal 5?
I just had a question. So are they planning on doing a non-achievement rubric for the high school level, adding that to change that report card is basically what we're looking at?
That's correct. Okay. So, and this journey can continue on even past some of these finite goals that we put in place. We're not looking to go like way out on the deep end. We can do that potentially down the road, but right now we're just trying to solidify, and again, it depends on the building you're at, right? But at a minimum, we're trying to solidify some commonalities. So non-achievement rubric, a standardized language that everybody understands and agrees upon and that we can use to report out. But then also just some other fundamental components of grading, like do you allow test retakes or don't you? Everybody needs to be on the same page. Do you give incompletes or zeros? What is homework worth, if anything, and how do you utilize that to determine a student's progress in learning the content? So there's a lot, do we provide extra credit or not, right? The right answer is no, but we'll get to that as we move through this journey. So a lot of steps that need to be taken, and like I said, going back to the board goal, objective 1, strategy 1, it starts with providing the professional development to the staff, making sure they're aware of the research. The good thing is with this, the research is in, it's done, it's conclusive, there's no debating it. It's just exposing folks that perhaps haven't seen it, and that's where we need to start.
Okay.
Any other questions? I really appreciate all the work that you gathered on this, to give us that baseline thing. This is, it's pretty exciting. I'm not sure everybody thinks that's exciting, but I think getting everything on the same page moving through here, I think is going to be appreciated. At some point in the journey. Appreciated.
So then we'll move to board goal 4. And for this, I prepared a memo that I think summarizes, again, the current board goal, which is also still the new board goal around safety and security. And so for each of those components and strategies, I've listed out the progress that we made or have not made this year on that goal. I will be honest, this year, our main focus around safety and security has been on COVID and some of the initiatives that we had looked at and some of these components that in a normal year would have been a major investment of time and resources just have fallen by the wayside because we've really needed to focus in on ensuring our staff and students were safe when they were here at school due to the pandemic. So I will hit just a couple of highlights. Earlier this year, I think back in February, you heard a presentation on mental health. That continues to be a major focus. In fact, in our draft district improvement plan, which the board will have a chance to review once it's finalized, we've actually expanded our focus on student mental health to also looking at staff mental health, especially given the stresses that this year has caused, and being more strategic and thoughtful about how we implement that support system for our staff here at school. We're also looking at adding a 0.5 of social worker FTE next year, so that we'll have one full FTE of social work support at each building. Obviously, the board hired a social worker this evening, but we're also looking at making our social worker at high school, who was a half-time employee, full-time next year. And so, again, coming out of the pandemic, when staff and kids are likely to need even more support, especially next August and throughout next year, we want to make sure that we have the staffing in place for that. One thing that has not changed is we continue to closely collaborate with our local first responders. Obviously, this year we had to say goodbye to Chief Young as he retired after 10 years of outstanding service. Chief Jim Wolf is now our new police chief and had just a great start to that working relationship. He's just been phenomenal out in front of the elementary campus, greeting kids in the morning and being very visible. And I think that's just a nice example of that working partnership that we have between our local police force and the school. And then finally moving into physical security upgrades, the big, I guess the major upgrade this year has been the installation of door prop sensors throughout all the buildings. This has been something that's driven me crazy for years, that continuously find doors that are propped or left unsecured. That will come to an end with the system. We had one building that went live today, and then the other buildings will go live within the next week or two. And the nice thing about this is that if a door is not properly secured, it sends an automated message out to the staff that need to know that, and will continue to do that until someone closes it properly. So, so the days of sticking a rock in the door or a pencil or any of those other things, or just failing to shut it securely behind you are over. And this is something I've wanted done for a long time, and I think we got it finally solved. So from a physical security standpoint, in terms of facility upgrades, that was our big effort this year, and we pretty much got that one done. The board, a month or two ago, gave a conceptual approval to moving forward with the bidding process for building the secured entrances at Kids Corner Little Hornets and Discovery Elementary. Obviously, that'll come back to you once the bids are finalized. We're anticipating having that in August, September timeframe for you to look at, with construction anticipated to begin June of 2022, June, July of 2022. So that'll be the main effort for the next 2 years in terms of physical security upgrades. And then it's not in your memo, but I think Paige did a nice job of highlighting it. Just the kind of getting out in front and being progressive in terms of our mindset of offering testing opportunities to staff, which started about 2 months ago, and then we'll expand to students whose parents are interested in having rapid antigen testing starting tomorrow at 3:30 at the high school. So that is an additional safety component that I feel like we've leaned forward on, and look forward to seeing or hoping that community members will take advantage of that if so interested. So that's kind of a summary of the board goal. Obviously, the memo has some additional details in there. Are there any questions that I can address?
Yeah.
I, again, also appreciate the memo, because sometimes I think when I think of security, I think of those physical pieces, the security and safety piece of keeping our students safe and practicing lockdowns. And it's nice to be reminded that it is our mental health and our allergy awareness and ethics training and AEDs and all of the things that go into keeping all of our staff and students safe. And I appreciate all of that.
You know, we've done all the state required drills, and despite COVID, we've done all those this year. We were just outside doing the fire drill last Friday afternoon, actually. So it's lockdown, secure with restricted access, all that stuff. We've kept all that. In fact, I had a conversation with a principal today that was going back through their one of their emergency plans and just reviewing everything. So that's a big part of it. That the work with this will never stop, but just like some of the other goals, but. We always have to keep safety at the forefront.
Yeah. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, we're going to move on. We're up to board committee reports. It looks like there's a finance and facility meeting the 27th at 4:30. Marketing communication on the 28th at 4:30, and both of those, as of now, knock on wood, will be in this room. Face to face in this room. Okay. The next is board policy committee, which is there.
We held a remote meeting on March 29th, and we discussed, I believe, 11 policies, all of which are up for discussion items later this evening.
She's trying for a record this year.
Well, to be fair, a lot of them are just going through, it's not much editing, I should say, or new information.
Okay, next up is our discussion items, and there is our teacher tenure recommendation.
So not many teachers up for tenure this year, but the ones we have are outstanding candidates. The first is at the high school, which is Lisa Dean. Dr. Delp has provided a nice summary of her work. Just an outstanding teacher. I had a chance, actually, she was one of the teachers I've watched teach remotely this year and had an opportunity to really grasp some of the challenges that our educators are working through in that new instructional medium. But among the great things about Ms. Dean, outside of her instructional abilities, has been her work to jump into extra things that our students take advantage of, such as work with NHS and the yearbook, which is a massive endeavor that I don't envy someone having to be in charge of. So she came with a wealth of experience to us and has stepped right in and just been an outstanding educator in the English Language Arts department at the high school. Miss Renee Heidi at Explore, again, a teacher with a wealth of experience that we were able to bring on board. I believe she came from out of state, actually. We were able to bring her in a couple of years ago and has just done a phenomenal job teaching 5th grade. At Explore. And then in a similar vein, Jill Fuller came into the district after many years working outside the area and has just been a phenomenal addition to the Fit for Life team. Her and Heath Claxton down there at the elementary campus. Very involved, very visible, and has just done a great job. So we have 3 really strong candidates for tenure this year that I have not the slightest reservation in recommending the board approve.
Are there any questions about any of the 3 teachers that are being recommended? So we're okay to put that on the vote in
Yep.
May?
Yes.
The next thing up for discussion is teacher. Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, so I will send out the dates to the board this week. We have finalized the dates, and Jim Davis, food service director, has solidified the menu. So the plan will be, there'll be, obviously, given the context of this year, it'll be to-go meals that he'll have pre-arranged. He's got a pretty extensive menu option that I'm a little bit surprised at, actually. He's gone above and beyond. So there's plenty of things to choose from. And so the plan is staff will be able to go in and select what they want in advance. The food service team will prepare the meals and have them ready for teachers and custodians, secretaries, all the staff of our various buildings on the dates in May that they've selected. So I think 3 of the buildings are on the first week of May, and then the high school is more towards the end of the month. But I will get those dates out to you this week. And to the extent possible, if you can be available or visible, just to, I don't know, help with passing meals out or just being there as folks come in to grab them. I know that's always appreciated by staff in each of the buildings.
What was that week, one more time?
I'm sorry?
What were the dates on those?
I'll send those out to you this week. Yeah, just.
First weekend in May, first full weekend in May, right?
Yeah, so the buildings, the first full week in May, we got 3 of the buildings, or 4 if you count, I guess if we count our preschool as a separate building. And then the high school is more towards the end of the month. So those are selected by the buildings based on their internal schedules.
Great. I think Jeff should do his hair green in honor of our past administrator. You look good.
All right, next, district technology agreement.
You want me to take this? Yeah, so can I combine them together? They're kind of related. So I think as the board is aware, we are retooling our the way we manage our technology services in the district. And so this will look very similar, I think, in a lot of ways to how it has looked. It's just a slightly different mechanism. So over the last almost 10 years, we've had an agreement with Hazlitt, where Hazlitt has provided all of our technology services for us and the management of those services. Next year, and then moving into the future, we're going to kind of branch off and become a little bit more independent. And so we're doing that through 2 different mechanisms. The first is discussion item C here, which is a technology agreement with the Ingham Intermediate School District. And this will be for more of the technical things that none of us really see. So like engineer support for our networks and things along those lines. All the different technology services that we've always paid for, but we've just filtered the money through Hazlitt and they paid for it for us. So there's no increase in cost to any of this. It's just flowing through a different avenue. So instead of paying Hazlitt, we'll pay the ISD directly for those support services, and the details of that, what we get for that money is listed in the services agreement that's in your packet. Discussion item D, which is the technology agreement with Hazlitt. That will continue, but there's really just 2 components to it. So the first is that they'll continue to provide the technicians to support technology services throughout the district. We use 2 different technicians, 2 individuals, 2 technicians that are part of that agreement, the same that it's always been. Obviously, we've claimed James as our own through the board's action earlier today to oversee that. And then Jeff Casson, who's our outgoing technology director, will stay on as a consultant and to support us as we kind of move into that first year of being somewhat autonomous as far as technology services go. So, from an end user standpoint, you're going to see pretty much the same types of services being provided. at the same cost that we have been paying for the last 10 years. It's just some small tweaks to how the agreements are outlined. Any questions that I can address in terms of how this will look?
Questions on the technology agreement?
No.
All right, then we will move that for action at our next meeting. Next up, board policies. Sarah?
I'll take it, and then if Adam wants to add anything else. The first one that you're looking at is something that I believe is required. So it's a new policy that we need on our books. The other ones, as you can see, are old 97 policies that we've just looked at to see if there needed any updating as far as possibly renaming policies to align with what the policy is talking about. And then the last one, there was more additions needed. Adam, do you want to fill in any holes or anybody else on the committee?
Yeah, just the federal procurement policy, which is the first one. I guess I have to scroll all the way back up here to see the number, but the first one listed in your packet. So federal procurement, which would be policy 3615. That would be new, as Sarah said, and it's just illegally required that we have that. It was something that our auditor noted back in the fall, and this just outlines our business rules in terms of how we procure services and goods. It's stuff we've already been doing. We just needed it in black and white in the policy book. Most of the other policies, like Sarah said, they're just tweaking some grammatical and some titles and things like that. Mostly around non-certified staff, which just needed some touching up. The last policy, 8480, which is student health services, that last paragraph, which is on page 73 of your board packet, this was something the policy committee discussed, and so based on that discussion, I drafted a paragraph here that hopefully caught the intent of where the committee was at the end of that meeting. But what this does is it allows administrators to request a visual inspection of a student immunization record for COVID. And by doing that would allow the quarantine period, if that student was in close contact with a COVID positive individual, to be waived. It's not a requirement. Parents could opt not to obviously have their child vaccinated and opt to opt to not produce that documentation, which is perfectly fine. But under current health orders, they would have to serve the extent of that quarantine period, which means they would not be able to be present for in-person instruction. I also want to be clear that this is not in any way a requirement for students to be vaccinated, or staff for that matter. It simply allows an administrator to ask for proof of visual inspection of immunization records so that that child's quarantine period can be waived. And it's completely at the option of the parent as to whether or not they want to provide that documentation.
Are there any questions about any of these policies? All right, they were all being moved forward to vote on at our next meeting. Next up, kids corner rates and hours.
Yeah, so Rebecca Olson is outlined in the memo there, her recommendation for what rates for her programs will look like moving into the summer and on after that. The key points that I will bring to your attention is an increase in the summer rate for kids camp from $200 to $210. And that we're also going to be introducing a 10% sibling discount, which is something I think we've needed for a while for families with multiple children involved in that program. So So slight increase in cost, $10, but there'll be significant savings for families that opt to enroll multiple children in those programs. Otherwise, it just outlines the operating hours, the options for enrolling in those programs in terms of number of days of the week, and any corresponding costs for families that opt to enroll their children in those tuition-based programs.
I have a quick question into those operating, has that always been the operating hours, that they're different for summer and school year?
Well, they've had a standard operating hours that they've had to tweak this year due to COVID and the fact that they have to have kids in silos, so to speak, and that they only have a certain limited staff. So the hours are slightly more condensed than they have been. I think, in the past they started at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's a little slightly shortened hours, but not extensively so.
Any questions?
I think once we get past this mess we're in, that there would be no issue with going back to the hours we.
I was just thinking of, back when I had childcare, like 5:30 was kind of cutting it close. So I didn't want families that usually it's during the school year not be able to use this during the summer because they couldn't get their kids out of daycare by 5:30 if they worked till 5.
Really glad to see the sibling discount. That's been a long time to ask for. Good job.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move to action. Recommendation of technology. Yeah.
So this is an every year occurrence around this time of year where our personal computers or PCs throughout the district are on a 5 to 6 year rotational life cycle. And so every year around this time, the tech department brings a request memo to the board to support replacing 1/5, 1/6 of our personal computers throughout the district. This money's built into their budget, so it's not an additional expense. It's just a normal annual occurrence. So this is this year's request, and the dollar amount is pretty much consistent with what it's been every other year.
These are desktops?
Yes, so these would be devices like, the primary device that a teacher might use in their office or a principal might have.
Any questions on our technology?
That was just what we were talking about before. 5 years.
Yeah.
Computer, 5 years. Doesn't matter what type they are. They just have to be replaced.
Well, and this is one of the great things that, Jeff Casson brought into the district. This is very well thought out, long-term, predictable rotation schedule of everything. We just replaced all the printers in the district, not the copiers, just normal printers, right? I mean, they went through and replaced all those on a schedule. And then, the days where we had computers that it was based on who you know or what you finagled, you might have the computer that took 10 minutes to turn on, and you might have the brand new one. Well, now there's a consistent, predictable replacement schedule that stays on budget and allows our staff to do what they need to do efficiently.
And I'm sure whoever our finance person is enjoys. Okay, back to our financial service agreement.
Yeah, so we're bringing it back, but this should this be a short-term stopgap measure. So Rick Jensen will be has returned effective this morning as our finance director. That role obviously he's very familiar with and will continue on splitting his time between Hazlitt and Williamston until the end of June. We aim to have a candidate to the board for a full-time director position by the first meeting in June. So if everything goes well with the interview process, anticipate achieving that goal. And we'll work with Rick to do a bit of a left seat, right seat transition throughout the summer, even after June's over, to get our new person up to speed. But we greatly appreciate Rick his willingness to do this. And I got to tell you, I mean, I just think it speaks to the relationships that we have, especially with Hazlitt, that, you know, you pick up the phone and call and say, hey, we got a problem. And they're willing to come up with a solution to help us out that same day. So this just locks in the financial aspect of this. And, you know, again, I want to extend my appreciation to Steve Cook and Rick Johnson at Hazlitt for their flexibility and willingness to help us out on an unanticipated situation.
Any questions about the financial agreement?
No.
We'll watch them back for a little bit. Moving on to action items. Do I have a motion for the approval from our meeting?
Motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the minutes for the regular meeting held on March 15th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Any opposed? Second, the supporting our COVID learning plan. I have a motion.
Well, you want me to?
Oh.
I got to go over the attendance for you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well,
I think I have to do that.
we need a motion and then we'll do your update. So I need a first.
Motion that the Williamston Board of Education affirm the extended COVID-10 learning plan? COVID-19 learning.
Good.
Like, that's a different COVID.
Hey, don't.
COVID-19.
Into the COVID-10 to COVID-19. So we have first, second.
Second. Or Jeff, beat me to it.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, is that?
Second, and now, Adam, can you give us an update?
Yeah, so starting off with attendance, which again, required to do. So from our last meeting, the week of March 15th to the 19th, attendance was at 96.5. The week of March 22nd, it was at 96.08. And then dropped off a little bit the week prior to and after spring break. So the week prior, March 29th, was at 93.56. And this past week was at the week of April 12th was at 94.07, which is, you know, still great attendance rates, just slightly lower than our normal, which is about 96, 97%, but that's to be expected with spring break. The plan, in terms of the extended learning plan, is the same plan the board has approved the last 2 months. There's no changes in your packet. The only thing that's been adjusted is the date. And as well in your packet, I wanted to illustrate this. We knew that one significant change that, you know, it's just been par for the course this year. These changes that come out of left field, seemingly on a weekly basis. Back in March, we had to address House Bill 4048, which required 20 hours of in-person instruction. Fortunately, we kind of saw the writing on the wall with this, and due to the board's judgment in February, already had a plan in place to achieve this before this bill actually was signed into law. You can imagine the circumstances in districts that had not addressed this, and they had a week to 2 weeks to prepare. So we were fortunate in that regard. So the memo here, which I sent to the county superintendent, who will do the pupil accounting and auditing for this. So I wanted to make sure we were in the writing and on the record for what our plan entailed. Shows the total weekly hours of in-person instruction at each building, and that we are in compliance with House Bill 4048. Are there any questions on that memo that I could address? So then moving on to the last piece, obviously everyone in the community is aware that we are in a pause status, and I do want to clarify one misconception that I've heard, which is that this was in response to the governor's request, and while we by no means are not abiding by recommendations and guidance that's coming from the state and DHHS, Our decisions have been based on local data and recommendations from the Ingham County Health Department. So obviously the governor and DHHS are looking at the state as a whole. It's a big state. We like to kind of go into what's happening locally in Ingham County and get guidance from the medical experts in our county. So a week prior to the governor's press conference, Ingham County had announced that they were recommending a pause for the first week after spring break for grades 6 through 12, and then extended that recommendation at the end of last week for an additional week for high school. So we are following their recommendations, which is something that we've tried to do since the outset here. And I fully anticipate, although I cannot guarantee because I don't know what the rest of the week will hold. Every day is a new adventure. But our current plan is that high school will return to in-person next Monday. Middle school came back to in-person today. But obviously a lot of variables at play on a daily basis. But that is the plan moving forward. And at that point, we would resume the extended COVID learning plan as has been approved by the board to this point.
So Adam, we have a sample size, small sample size, but 200 kids getting tested on a Sunday and no positives. Is that information being shared with other schools in the ISD as well as the county health department?
So actually last week, the first week back, the Ingham County Health Department asked for our results from the testing. I mean, obviously not people's names or personal information, but just the total number of tests administered and total number of positives. So they are looking at that, and I don't know for sure what they're doing with it, but perhaps taking that into consideration with their future recommendations. The thing with COVID is with the quarantine rules. I mean, that's the issue. It's close contacts and the requirement to quarantine if you're identified as a close contact. It doesn't take many cases in the building to have a profound effect on children's opportunity to attend school in person. So it's not always the raw numbers. It's just the timing, how many kids they were close to in a given day, and our hands are tied there. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. So we keep reiterating to parents and thanking them. If you've been in close contact or with any speculation that someone in your family or household might be positive or has been in close contact with a person who has been, please don't send your children to school, because all it does is require them to isolate, and then all the kids they were in touch with, the quarantine, which could affect classrooms, it can affect co-curricular activities, sports, the high school musical, all these things we have coming up for our seniors at the end of the year. So just err on the side of caution.
And the quarantine, since the news is reporting currently that kids 16 and over can get vaccinations, and that there are a number of slots, both at Sparrow County, what have you, that are going unused. I mean, they're staying open because nobody's taking them. There's plenty of spots for vaccine. And it's my understanding with the vaccine, after you've had both doses, 2 weeks after the second dose, if you become in close contact with somebody and you have the card to show, you then don't have to quarantine, correct?
Right, and that was the rationale for the policy that you looked at tonight. So a parent can show us, we don't need to store it, track it, keep it in a file. If you can just show us the card, then it's been 2 weeks after that second shot, and there's no reason to have to quarantine. It would treat it the same way we're treating staff members at this point. So that's the potential advantageous part if a parent so chose to have their child vaccinated and so chose to be comfortable with producing that documentation.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Until next month. The next is the recommendation for the board bits in your packets. Do I have a first?
I make a motion that the Williamston Community
School Board of Education accept the bid from Court Menders LLC to resurface the tennis courts at the high school.
Support?
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, motion carries. Okay, we do not have any roll call votes or action items. We have our board goals are there. We have, Adam has kind of updated us on some of those, and we'll continue to do that. The next thing in our packet are some letters of retirement and returning to work and resignation. So I do want to say, the individuals that really will be leaving holes in our school community. One individual has been here for 35 years. The other one, I'm not sure how long she's been here, but
Took a drink of water down the road. And I'm sitting here suffocating under my mask with like water in my.
So I just thank those individuals that are retiring and all of their service to our community. That is going to leave a hole that will need to be filled. Also, Katie's resignation is in there. Again, she for the short amount of time she was here, she did some great things, jumped into a really difficult situation, and seriously was hired by Kelly, who then had me Adam and take over and get us through COVID, and it just was a difficult situation. So her choice was very difficult, and she left and is going to have a job where she can spend more time with her kids. But again, 3 big holes in our school committee, but excited for all of them for their adventure.
Yeah, if I could, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Yes, I mean, I'd just like to touch on our 2 retirees, and, I don't know what kind of options we'll have to really send them off this year. I guess we'll have to look and see what we're able to do, but, Dan Brooks is, there's that expression, jack of all trades, master of none. Well, he's like the master of all trades, so he kind of breaks that figure of speech. I don't know, it's kind of this is always bittersweet when I've been in the district for 20 years. And I've gotten to know kind of the legacy and the lasting contributions these folks have made. And like Dan's been a part of like every, initiative with anything dealing with the grounds or facility upgrades. I mean, just has probably fixed or mended almost everything in this district at some point, right? From like, you name it, he's been involved. He's a guy that crawls through crawl spaces covered in all kinds of stuff to get up underneath a floor under a classroom to fix a pipe or something. I mean, it's just the amount of things he's done would be hard to overstate. And I think anyone that's worked in this district for a period of time has had Dan in their room, in their school, putting out some type of issue or fixing something. Has just been invaluable, and I don't know how we replace him, to be completely honest. And Christy and I, Christy Davidson and I had the privilege of teaching with Christy for many years at the middle school. She also, I believe, taught at the elementary for a period, but my time working with her was at the middle school here. And in fact, she was my Teachers Learning Together TLT partner when we were first bringing that initiative into the district, which at the time was like, mind blowing. The fact that, one teacher would go to another teacher's classroom and watch them teach, right? It seems obvious, but like it was very, very new. And a lot of people were really uncomfortable with it. So this is going back, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14 years. And Christy and I were working together to kind of model what like that would look like. Like it's okay to go into a colleague's room and give them some feedback. Like everything's going to be all right. And now that's just normal. Right? It's just the way things work in the district. But so Christy was instrumental in that. She's been a phenomenal social studies teacher. She has really pushed us as a district in terms of what we're able to do with technology and blended learning. A lot of the work that she'd been doing for years all of a sudden became really important this year for obvious reasons. And she's really done some really progressive things. I mean, talking about being an educationally progressive district, that the Learning Lab the new classroom that we built in the middle school that we had the dedication to a couple of years. One of those rooms is hers, and she's really been able to pilot some really innovative instructional practices, from flexible seating to new ways of using technology, everything from virtual goggles to you name it. She's got all kinds of great stuff in that classroom. So, so just another huge loss, but we're obviously happy for both of these folks, and I guess it is. It's always tough to say goodbye, but you know, we also brought in some really great new people today, which you know obviously bodes well for the future. But yeah, Christy and Dan, just two awesome people. So I'll stop talking now. But the longer you're here, the harder it is to say goodbye to people you work closely with. You know, so.
I will say personally, when my daughter heard that Mrs. Davidson was leaving, she was very sad. So, because she was one of her favorite teachers in middle school. So.
Neither one of them. Maybe I'm just getting old. Neither one of them is old enough.
Well, Dan's still strong enough to like lift like pretty much any object that you can find. So yeah.
But it is not. So this does bring us to the end of our meeting. It is going to review citizen comments, but do they want? Okay. Next is board member reports and requests, and I am going to bounce it over to Dave to give us the first update on his meeting with Meridian Township, and he has some school foundation.
So 3 weeks ago, met with the joint meeting of Meridian Township that had representatives from other school districts, municipalities, townships, and just kind of everybody getting together, introducing each other, and talking about the different struggles and ways that they're overcoming some of those. So obviously the big discussion point was COVID-19 and how that was impacting everybody. We had a lot of talks about different communities doing outside events and how different businesses were able to overcome some of the obstacles that they were encountering. We also heard from both Cattle and CATA talking about the different ways that they were helping the community. CATA taking people to vaccine appointments and things like that, and CATA making resources available to the community. For Williamston specifically, we heard a bit about the initiatives to do river cleanup, to allow more space for canoes and kayaks, and also potentially linking up to the river trail. So something that we're working on, hopefully. And then as far as other issues that were really common in the area, rural broadband was a large one. I know that impacts families in our districts where high-speed internet simply isn't available to everybody, especially in a more distributed area like this where you just don't have the population centers. And a fair bit of talk, no movement, but making that a municipal utility or other ways of facilitating access for rural citizens to have high-speed internet. And then finally, we also had a lot of discussion around inclusivity and diversity within these communities and how they were making that a priority.
Great.
And I also met last week with the Schools Foundation. So first fundraiser we've done since COVID has started, and that's going to be our, our golf outing. So that is scheduled right now for May 8th. So first big one we've done in quite a while, which is very, very exciting. So we're looking for volunteers, teams, golfers to get involved. And that's going to be at the Brookshire.
Very exciting. That is I thought that outing before, I worked that outing before, and it is a really, really fun event. So if anybody wants to get a team together or help out in any way, or maybe we can reach out to them. Are they still doing like their silent auction? In the past, we've kind of tried to help out and gather silent auction stuff.
Yes, I don't know if they have that finalized or not yet, but that was.
Maybe that's something we can think about. This golf outing does, it is one of their fundraisers, their larger fundraisers, and a lot of that money does go right back into our district. So I think any way we can have a presence or help out would be really nice. Thank you very much. Anything else? Chris?
Adam, one question, it might be something just to look into. After hearing Cattle, I just had a question about I saw a report on Cattle's site talking about all the different districts that were working with them, and that every district in Ingham County now, except for Williamston, has gone to the step of providing library cards for all students. And I just didn't know if you could report back to us at some point, just to kind of give us some insight into what's holding Williamston back from that. So just in the future, I mean.
Yeah, we were actually supposed to be the pilot district for that,
Yeah.
so it's a long story. I'll let you know.
Okay, that'd be great. It was just because I saw it on their website, and it was kind of like, oh, Williamston's not doing this. And I was like, oh, okay.
I would, again, like to thank each and every one of you. This is a pretty thick packet to get through, so I appreciate you coming prepared. Thank you, Betsy, for sticking around for these late nights, and Aaron for preparing us. And again, thanks to James who sets up our overflow room, make sure he's monitoring everything, and when we leave, at some point, you need to take off your phone. So, again, I get that these are late nights for us, but they're either later or earlier. Here, Adam, thank you so much for your due diligence and being so prepared. It's very much appreciated. With all of it, I will take a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Have a second? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
James, what do I gotta do to? Stop streaming.